Well, good morning. I want to walk you through what we call the daily word. And we come in our study to Matthew chapter 8. And what's great about this chapter is that Matthew actually picks up where he left off in chapter 4. Because remember in chapters 5, 6, and 7, he gives us the Sermon on the Mount, this summary of just about everything Jesus wanted us to know as far as his teaching of wisdom in the Word of God. But here we come to chapter 8, and what's going to happen here is that Matthew now picks up. It says in verse 1 of chapter 8 of Matthew, when Jesus came down from the mount, large crowds followed him, and most likely he had just given the Sermon on the Mount. And so now we pick up the narrative, and what's going to happen here is that Jesus has already demonstrated the fact that he's Messiah. This is what Matthew has been arguing from chapter 1. He has argued from his genealogy, the prophetic fulfillment of his birth and infancy, the Father's testimony at his baptism, resisting Satan's temptations in his teachings. And here in chapter 8, we're going to see in chapters 8 and 9, there's going to be 9 miracles. And the first 3 are going to be basically right here in chapter 8. And this is going to show that Jesus is indeed the promised Messiah because he's going to give us the forensic evidence of miracles, of the very miracles that he's going to create. And the fact is, some people want to say, well, I don't know if I can believe in miracles. Well, let me just ask you this. If you give me Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, if it's true that God is the creator and Jesus Christ is the creator, the Son of God, through which God created everything, remember we learned that from John 1, in him all things came into being. Colossians chapter 1, that it was through the Son that all things were created. Well, then if Jesus is actually the creator of all things, and that means natural law as well, well, can he not supersede that which he created? And so the concept of miracles, that is the breaking of natural law, well, the only person who could really do that is the one who created the natural law. And if indeed Jesus did, then why would we have any problem with the concept of miracles? But this is basically divinity breaking into the natural box of space and time to manifest, and like I said, to give us the forensic evidence that he was indeed, came from the Father, from another dimension, from heaven, entered into our world, and he's going to demonstrate that by poking his little finger right into space and time, and indeed violating the very natural laws that he had created. So it makes absolute sense to me, and no one could deny these miracles unless they just have by choice decided that they're reasonably not even going to consider the possibility. Now, what he does here in chapter 8, that is Matthew recording his first 3 miracles of Jesus, is very interesting because Jesus always reached out to the outcasts. And you're going to see the first person to be healed is going to be a leper. The second one is going to be a slave of a Gentile, that is a centurion, Roman centurion. And the third one is going to be a woman. And these are significant because in the Jewish custom of the day, lepers, as you'll see, were literally called scaly. That's what the word means. It's most likely what we have today called Hansen's disease. So we read, and he goes on, when Jesus came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him. And a leper came to him and bowed down before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing. Be cleansed. And immediately, notice immediately, his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, see that you tell no one, but go, show yourself to the priest, and present the offering that Moses commanded as a testimony to men. So anyway, what you have here is the very first one, is this leper. Now you understand something about leprosy. According to Mosaic law, they were ostracized. They were not permitted to go into the synagogue, the temple. And leprosy was not just the skin only, the spongy tumors, but it also affected the internal organs, as well as bones began to deteriorate. So under Mosaic law, clothes were torn, the mouth had to be covered, legally you were ostracized. You had to be 6 feet distance from anyone, unless there was a wind. Then it would have to be 150 feet, apparently. And they would have to cry out, unclean, unclean. I don't know, feels a little bit of what we're going through with this pandemic. Anyhow, one ancient rabbi wrote, "When I see lepers, I throw stones at them, lest they come near me." Another ancient rabbi at this time wrote, "I would not so much as eat an egg that was purchased on a street where a leper had walked." I mean, can you feel the love? So this was the world that when you received or you were diagnosed with leprosy, you were ostracized by the community, by the temple, by the synagogue. It was a horrible situation. But you see the humility of this leper. He doesn't demand that Jesus heals him. He doesn't say he even deserves it, but he really asks for mercy. And Mark tells us that once this man was healed, he was so excited. Even though Jesus said, "Don't go telling everybody," that he went ahead and shared it with everyone. Well, now Jesus returns to his headquarters, that is the home that he chose to spend most of his ministry when he was up in Galilee, Capernaum. So verse 5. So when Jesus entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, imploring him, and saying, "Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, fearfully tormented." Jesus said to him, "I will come and heal him." But the centurion said, "Lord, I am not worthy of you to come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I also am a man under authority with soldiers under me, and I say to this one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my slave, 'Do this,' and he does it." Now when Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who were following, "Truly, I say to you, I have not found such great faith with anyone in Israel." Remember, this is a Gentile. "I say to you that many will come from east and west and recline at the table of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And Jesus said to the centurion, "Go, it shall be done for you as you have believed." And the servant was healed at that very moment. What's interesting on this one is Jesus now returns to the west side of the Lake of Galilee, here at Capernaum. And most scholars believe these three miracles that Jesus will do here in chapter 8 all happen in the same day. So this is right after he indeed has healed the leper. Now he meets this centurion, who was a Roman soldier. Centurion meant he was over 100 men. And he's concerned about the suffering of his slave. Now, back in the context of this day, slave owners didn't really care about the care of their slaves. As a matter of fact, Aristotle himself called them tools to be used as animals. And yet here is this heart of this Gentile Roman soldier caring about the suffering of his servant, his slave. Now, Jesus is going to heal him, but notice this about the sons of the kingdom will be cast into outer darkness. Well, what is this? Well, the Jews believed that there would be a heavenly feast of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they alone would be at this feast, and all those dirty Gentiles would be gone. They would be cast out of the kingdom and left in outer darkness. And Jesus is basically saying, hey, people are going to come from the east and the west. He's talking about the Gentiles, and that many of these self-righteous Pharisees are going to be the ones cast out into outer darkness. So now he's healed a leper, he's healed a Gentile, now he's going to heal a woman. The first thing that many male Jews did every morning at the times of Jesus, they would pray this prayer: Lord, I thank thee that I was not born a slave, a Gentile, or a woman. Now, I know that sounds horrible because it is horrible. But Jesus reached out to the down and out, the excluded by the self-righteous. And so now it tells us that he's going to heal a woman, the mother-in-law of Peter, verse 14. When Jesus came into Peter's home, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick in bed with fever. And he touched her, and the fever left her, and she got up and waited on him. When evening came, they brought to him many who were demon-possessed and who had cast out the spirits with a word, and healed all who were ill. This was to fulfill what was spoken through Isaiah the prophet, that he himself took our infirmities and carried away our diseases. So when evening comes, all of a sudden, all these people show up with their sick folks and the folks who've been spiritually influenced by powers of darkness. That's why many scholars believe that this particular day was the Sabbath, that he healed the leper and he healed the Gentile slave, because many of these Jews, they wanted to honor, you do not work on the Sabbath. So they waited till the evening, that is the close of the Sabbath. Now they're going to go ahead and let Jesus heal their sick. So they all show up. And Jesus heals them. Heals all of them, which makes you think, well, then can we as Christians claim, why doesn't Jesus, heal us? There are Christians who will say that we deserve healing, that when Jesus conquered diseases, as it says here, it means that none of us should ever be sick. Well, if you're going to hold that, well, then none of us Christians should ever die, because he also conquered death. And the Apostle Paul was not healed of his thorn in the flesh, and he was as godly and a man of faith as anyone. This is about the will of God. Well, the scribe comes, and you notice what happens we have here when discipleship is tested in verse 18. Now, when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to depart to the other side of the sea. That is now from the west side of Lake of Galilee. He's going to go to the other side. Lake of Galilee is 13 miles long, 8 miles wide, but there's one section that's only 4 miles, and they're going to go to the other side just to get away from the crowds. Well, then a scribe came to him just before they're ready to leave, said to him, "Teacher, I will follow you to wherever you go." And Jesus says to him, "The foxes have holes and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." In other words, this scribe, he came, and he doesn't really care about the other teachers. These scribes were Jewish teachers, but apparently he came for all the wrong reasons, and Jesus knew that and said, there's not going to be any personal benefit. There's just going to be sacrifice if you follow me. And then another disciple shows up, verse 21. Another of the disciples said to him, "Lord, permit me first to go and bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Follow me and allow the dead to bury their own dead." That may sound horrible, but understand the historical context. What it meant to bury my father is, let me stay with the home until I can take over my father's business. And once I've buried my father, taken over the family business, then maybe I'll consider following you. And Jesus says, no, now's the time, and this needs to be the priority of your life. Well, in verse 23, we continue. Now Jesus gets in the boat to go over to the east side. When he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was covered with waves, but Jesus himself was asleep. Well, they came to him and woke him, saying, "Save us, Lord, for we're perishing." And he said to them, "Why are you afraid, you men of little faith?" Then he got up and he rebuked the winds and the sea, and it became perfectly calm. And the men were amazed and said, "What kind of man is this? Even the waves and the sea obey him." Well, what's interesting about this is people need to understand is that the Lake of Galilee was 600 feet below sea level. And up there in the Jordan Valley, you had the wind plummeting down to this very shallow lake, the Lake of Galilee. And when it would hit the surface, storms within 20 minutes could be waves of 6-7 feet high, even in this smaller lake or Sea of Galilee. And so the storm hits. But what I love is that they are so fearful. And here's Jesus right there with them. It comes down to, are you going to trust what you believe or not? Well, Mark tells us exactly what Jesus says to calm the storms. Literally, Jesus says, "Hush, be still." And at that word of the Creator, the creation obeys and the storm subsides. So they go ahead and continue to the east side, and they meet someone here. It says in verse 28, "And when he came to the other side, into the country of Gadarenes, 2 men who were demon-possessed met him as they were coming out of the tombs. And they were so extremely violent that no one could pass by. And they cried out, saying, what business do we have with each other? What business do we have with each other, Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before time?" But now there was a herd of many swine feeding at a distance from them. Well, the demons began to entreat him, saying, "If you are going to cast us out, well, then send us into the herd of the swine." And he said to them, "Go." And they came out and went into the swine, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, and they perished in the water. Well, the herdsmen ran away, and they went to the city and reported everything, including what had happened to the demoniacs. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. You'd think they'd be excited. Oh, no. And when they saw him, they implored him to leave their region. So what happens here is they show up on the other side, and they meet these 2 demoniacs. Now, Mark and Luke's account mentions only one, but there were most likely, there were 2, according to Matthew. And notice people will say, "Do you really believe in demoniacs?" Remember, demons were fallen angels, and they could have spiritual input in the lives of physical beings. For example, Judas. What's the dumbest thing Judas ever did? Well, betray Christ. On John 13, verse 2, it says, and Satan put it into the heart of Judas to betray Christ. Ephesians 5:18 says, be not drunk with wine, but filled with the Holy Spirit. You see, we tend to obey that which comes to our mind, our thoughts, our desires. What if the one who authors those thoughts and desires are not from within us, but rather powers of darkness, one of these fallen angelic beings? And if I tend to just submit and obey to whatever comes to my mind, whatever desire, whatever thought, then I'm permitting whoever authors those thoughts to be basically possessing me, guiding me. And that's what you have here, as they had given themselves over to this possession of evil spiritual powers. Well, these demons speak out, and they're so concerned about being judged now. They know there's going to be a judgment, but maybe with Jesus showing up, notice they recognize exactly who he is. Notice their respect. And so they asked if they could be cast into the pigs. They just want to escape the presence of Jesus. Hopefully they could escape their judgment that would have happened then. Why the pigs, and why does Jesus give them permission? Well, most likely they thought that if he destroyed the pigs, and these are Gentiles, remember this is pork, this is out of the Jewish area, this is on the east side of the Lake of Galilee, that the Gentiles there would be so angry at the pigs being destroyed and perish that they would actually attack Jesus, maybe kill Jesus. So they're trying to fight back in an indirect way. But the most remarkable thing as this chapter closes is here's these people see one who has control over demons and animals, and they want nothing to do with him. You see, rejection, even to see the miracles, this isn't about reason. It's about emotion. It's about a hard heart. You've got to just remember, this same Jesus does miracles in our lives. And as he does, do we choose to trust what we believe? Then don't be timid like they were in the boat. Don't be afraid. Remember, joy is the absence of fear. Well, we'll pick this up tomorrow. God bless you.